Good evening. Welcome to Voices from the Village. This is, my name is LaFortune. Our show tonight is called Shelter in the Churches. And we are going to be talking about the homeless problem here in Santa Cruz County and about what the local churches are doing about it. My guest, well, let me show, we're going to watch a video first before we get into, before I introduce my guests. In 2008, the UCSC TV, Slug TV, did a piece about homelessness in Santa Cruz County. And we're going to hear from people who are involved with this. We're going to hear from the, I think the director of the Downtown Association, and also Ken Cole from the Homeless Services Center. So let's watch that video now, please.
Many locals and students associate the downtown area of Santa Cruz with homelessness. One of these reasons is because of the amount of panhandling that occurs down here. Businesses are also beginning to notice the problem.
I see them elsewhere. I definitely feel that people hanging outside of the stores deters customers from coming in.
Well, the panhandling, I think they're kind of aggressive sometimes, and they're not really nice. Yeah, I do think most of the panhandlers are homeless. To find out more, I interviewed Keith Haltaway, the executive director of the Downtown Association.
And I think, again, confusing panhandlers with, quote, homeless, is not always an accurate connection and not always 100% true. There's a lot of people who panhandle downtown, a lot of kids who do literally take the bus back to their house up wherever they need to go. Most of the people who are homeless aren't downtown panhandling. It's just a very small group that would do.
2.5 minutes. Homelessness is a growing issue in Santa Cruz County, with numbers staggering at over 3,400. There simply isn't enough funding. And with shelters closing for spring and summer, including the National Guard Armory, which provided nearly 100 beds, many people are left with no place to stay. According to the 2005 Santa Cruz County Homeless Census and Survey, there are a total of 3,371 homeless in Santa Cruz County, including 187 families and 171 children. With shelters turning away a quarter of applicants and others closing for spring, many are forced to stay in abandoned buildings, parked vehicles, or even on the streets. Ken Cole, the executive director of the Homeless Services Center, had this to say.
The Homeless Services Center is a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to providing emergency services and trying to give people opportunities to move up and out of their homelessness. We have 4 major programs. One is an open day center where we provide meals and showers and basic assistance to people just on a walk-in basis. We also have an overnight emergency shelter program through local churches and the National Guard Armory in the rainy season. We also have a transitional housing program where people can stay up to 2 years to get jobs and move off the streets. And our latest program is a family emergency shelter. We operate the National Guard Armory as an emergency shelter. We have to close that every year in late March or mid-April. And the way I describe it is like driving off a cliff. That's what it feels like. And to the hundreds of homeless people that use that shelter over the wintertime, it makes no sense. You know, 1 minute the bed's there, the next minute I'm telling them it's gone. But any way you look at it, on the emergency services level, there's not enough beds, there's not enough opportunities for people on the street. We have really just a pittance of emergency capacity in this community.
The county has been acknowledging this growing issue, but with limited resources and funding, there is little they can do, and the problem will remain unresolved. To find out ways you can help, you can visit www.scshelter.org. This is Christina Bashai reporting for Banana Slug News. Back to you in the studio.
And welcome, and we're back. So that was a video. Again, it was shot by Slug TV, UCSC Television, and thank them for letting us use that. It's from 2008, and we heard some numbers in there about the numbers of people who are homeless in Santa Cruz on any given night. As you may know, every 2 years a survey is done of homeless people in Santa Cruz County, and this is mandated in order for the county to receive federal money for funding. The numbers we heard were around 3,500 a night. There's a huge huge number, much larger than I would have suspected before I learned about this some years ago. So we're going to talk about that and what various people are doing here about this in Santa Cruz County. So my guests here tonight, let me start with you. Across from me is Steve DeFields Gambrel, and you are with the Circle Church. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Christine Perrin is a member of the vestry of the so-called Red Church, the Calvary Episcopal, our beloved Red Church in downtown Santa Cruz. And Paul Seaver, you were with Trinity Presbyterian Church.
That's right.
Thank you for joining us. And finally, Reverend Jim Weller.
Uh-huh.
Good. Okay, I got that right. And you're with First Congregational Church. That's the one up on High Street.
Right. First
Okay.
Congregational up near Bay.
Yes, right. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. So there is the reason you're all involved, the reason you're here tonight, you're all involved with this church shelter program, and which is a program that well, tell me, what does it do? What is the church shelter program? Anyone?
It's a program in which 4 churches currently are participating, and each of us on one night of the week shelters a group of homeless men, women, and children, feeding them supper and providing them a comfortable, safe place to sleep for the evening.
Okay, all right. So it's not just shelter, it's also, there's a meal.
Yes.
Okay. So how long, Chris Perrin, you're a member of the vestry,
Right.
which is, I assume, the
Governing body,
body
basically.
of Calvary Episcopal.
Right.
And what is, and as a member of that, you have some involvement with this program, as you do, I guess, with all the programs in the church. How long has this program been in place at your church?
Well, it's been in place since February. Actually, if I could for a minute give you a little history.
Sure.
Father Joel Miller, our rector at Calvary, invited, I don't know how many, hundreds of churches, synagogues, city and county agencies, interested persons from the community. This is, I think, November of 2010, to a forum we had on a Saturday afternoon to discuss the homeless problem and the homeless problems that the homeless people face. He, out of this group of people, they formed a committee called the Association of Faith Communities, or AFC, to make it easier. And this committee meets every month, and they discuss what can be done, what's available, where can we go. So Father Joel from this committee then went to the vestry and said, we'd like to try to do a shelter program. Well, a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth to the parish, a lot of forums, because we felt we really had to get this explained well, have very firm guidelines for how it was going to be run. So it took some months. So we actually were ready to go in February, and we decided that we would open the doors to women with children, because at the time there were 50 women on the waiting list at the homeless shelter who were obviously had no place to go. Well, we were kind of disappointed because nobody wanted to come. And then we found out that these women had a place generally that was safe, a car, maybe a friend's couch, and to uproot their children, as you said earlier, they don't like to be visible, especially when they have young children in tow. So we had no responses. So then we said, okay, we're going to open the doors to men, women, and women with children or families. So that's what we did. And I think it was probably, I don't have the exact date, unfortunately, but around the end of February, early March, that we started getting our first guests. And so we've been doing it every Monday night since then. And then we were joined shortly thereafter by these 3 wonderful churches who each took a night. So that's kind of how it got going.
So there are 4 churches that are participating, and they're all
Right.
represented here tonight.
I got to know about the program by going to those AFC meetings and became aware that this was happening. Now, there had been a shelter program in our community some years ago. It was run out of the homeless shelter, the Rebelli Center, and it was much more formally run, but it had funding. The funding was lost and the program stopped. But we'd had some history in our church of working with homeless people and providing shelter. So I kind of felt this will go in our church. So I proposed that we join in, and we started toward the end of April I had the same experience. The first night nobody came. And you know, it reminds me a lot of that parable about going out in the streets, you know. One of the Gospels, there's a parable where the man wants to have a wedding banquet and nobody comes. Everybody has an excuse, and he tells the servants, go out in the streets and bring people in. I think it's kind of amazing, the parallels.
So, as you were both saying, the first night nobody came because you had targeted,
Yes.
you had invited women with children.
With children.
And you said that there was, unbeknownst to you, they had a safe place to go.
Well, at least a place where they didn't have to keep moving their children around every night. Some place that was, a lot of them in cars, of course, which is not a really wonderful environment to raise children, of course. But at least it was some place that they knew they could be safe. And so they didn't want to uproot the children. That's the story we got from the Homeless Service Center. That's what they told us.
And tell me, what does AFC stand for again?
Association of Faith Communities.
Okay, and this is a coalition of what is this organization?
Well, it just sprung up from this forum that Father Joel, initiated back in 2010. And these are people that just wanted to do something, even if a lot of times their churches are not participating per se, although we do have 3 more churches that are very close, we hope, to getting their communities, their parishes organized. And, they're watching what happens with us, how we operate, what we do. We've had a tremendous success as far as, certainly we had reservations, some people more than others, but it has proven to be just absolutely model. The guests are well behaved, they clean up beautifully, they arrive when they're supposed to, they leave when they're supposed to, because you can't just have people walking in and out of your church and your parish hall doing whatever. And I think that's been the experience talking with these
Just to
gentlemen.
fill in there, AFC is really an ad hoc coordinating committee comprised of laity and clergy representing a number of Santa Cruz area churches.
And other organizations.
And other organizations, but mostly churches. And we meet monthly, and we collaborate and coordinate our various congregations' efforts, outreach efforts, in an attempt to work with the public and private agencies that are also addressing the needs of poor and homeless people.
Okay, and your experience at your church, as Chris described and Paul described, the population that you do serve, how is that?
It's pretty much the same people. I personally go to Calvary Episcopal Church on Monday nights, which is the night that Calvary is hosting guests. And I have conversations with them all, get to know them all, invite them to come to my church on the next Sunday night. And then on that Sunday evening, I and a volunteer or 2 from my church will show up at Calvary downtown with cars to transport people up to my church, which is a couple of miles away. And the group varies from week to week, but it's pretty much the same group from night to night. So the group who is staying at my church tonight, most of them will probably be at Steve's church tomorrow night.
That's right.
And then at Paul's church the night after that.
Okay, so you're seeing, the same.
So it's consolidated into a group that becomes kind of a family among themselves, and that helps, doesn't it? Makes a big
Well, that was
difference.
the hope, and it seems to
And
have proven to be true.
We've learned that people on the street take care of one another. They care about each other, and they're taking care of each other as best they can.
Let me bring you in, Steve DeFields, Gambrel, and you are with Circle Church. Is that the church in the circles over on the west side?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yeah, used to be called Garfield Park Christian Church.
Okay, all right. So the name has changed.
Yes, and I'm the pastor there.
Okay, all right, great. Well, again, welcome to the show. So, were you involved with this AFC organizing meeting? And
Yeah.
So you've been in there from the beginning.
Back in the beginning in 2010, and even before that, we had our own ministries, a variety of ministries to homeless folks for several years before that even. So we were already, involved, and as I like to say, up to our armpits in the issues of the poor and the homeless and the marginalized. And so it was a natural fit for us to join this association and have colleagues and work together and brainstorm together. And so we did. And then we had thought that we would be right at the first of this satellite program, but we just didn't have the volunteers initially. But about a month ago, we came online on Tuesday nights. And it's been seamless. It's been absolutely seamless. It's probably the easiest and most smoothest ministry offering I've ever done in 14 years of ministry.
Wow. Someone's smiling on you, sounds like.
Well, and who's smiling on us in part is a couple of folks, Ian and Satori, who night after night during these 4 nights sort of supervises the program, and they've just organized it very well and made it almost painless for the churches to participate.
I see. Well, let's give him credit. Ian Mackay, you're speaking of?
Yes, I am.
And he's with your church,
Calvary.
yes? He's with Calvary Episcopal. I did meet him at a fundraiser for this, I think it was for the Monday night meal program, which is the same. I don't know if you were doing the sleeping at that time. This was several months, maybe a year ago.
No, we weren't. We didn't start. This
So
didn't
it
start
was,
until
it was the Monday night meal. Which
Right.
is
Well, that's been going on for about, what, four or 5 years?
And it's
quite a while.
so this expanded into this program. So Ian Mackay, and the other name you mentioned?
Satori, who is sort of Ian's assistant, and between the two of them, they come and they bring mats for the folks to sleep on, and they organize everything and supervise everything. And their continuity from night to night to night really helps that whole family as a family kind of coalesce together and look out for each other.
I would say it's their balanced judgment. On the one hand, they have a real sense of what people need and they want to help people. And on the other hand, they know where to draw limits and they're very careful. And it's really remarkable to watch the two of them function this way. They're both very, very good.
Great. We did invite Ian to appear tonight. He was not able to be here on this show, but I just wanted to get.
Both he and Satori are acting as monitors right now at my church with the group of homeless.
There it is. That's
why
why.
he couldn't come.
Wanted to make sure they got some recognition here. Okay. So the population you're serving, if it's not, are you getting women with children at all, or is it mainly men?
I don't really could come up with a statistic, but we've had several women with children or families with children. And the other group that surprised me was how many of the folks, not all, but probably at least half or 2/3 on some nights of the folks that we've had are in some way or another hobbled. They're either they got a broken leg and they're walking with a crutch right now, or they've got canes, they've got some physical disabilities that make it very, very difficult for them to move around. And you can imagine what it's like with those kind of bone and joint issues to try to sleep on a cold ground. So the people we're helping really need the help.
The group at our church tonight is 15 people, 4 of whom are women, and 3 of whom are little girls. So there's a mom with 3 little girls, and 2 other women, and the rest are men.
So 15, and is that a usual number for all the?
That's more than we've had any night, I think. We've had maybe 13.
Yeah, we set 10 as the limit. At our
I think that's
church.
more than we actually have mats for, isn't
Yeah,
it?
we don't have that.
Yeah, we don't have mats for all of
And
them.
we usually have a mat for everyone, a pretty good thick padded mat.
Are you having to move these, you said, from
Ian,
place to place?
They move from one church to the other, and Ian and Satori do all that work.
So this is a logistical challenge, obviously. How
It is.
about volunteers? Are you replete with volunteers, or can you use more use more help?
Can always use more help.
Okay.
We've been pretty lucky at Cavalry. We had, of course, summertime is people are on vacation and they're doing their summertime thing. So it's a little lean. But as I say, we've kind of settled into this routine. We have a sexton at our church who, her nickname is Spook. And she herself was a homeless person up until a few years ago. Now she is employed by Cavalry as our sexton. And she's also there on Monday nights and stays on Monday. So she gives them breakfast. And we know from Second Harvest, we got permission from Second Harvest. We get our food there for our Monday nights, so we get a little extra here, and we have food donated throughout the community, so we get a little extra here, a little extra there, and package up bags, little bags for them to take. And she pretty much has taken over that chore.
So financially, are the churches, you're spending money on this program?
Not much.
Not much?
Not very much. We had a donor. Is it okay to mention his name on the air?
Of course.
Paul Lee. He's well known in the community
Yes.
for his help to the homeless. He's a member of Cavalry and is very active, as you probably know, with the homeless concerns. And Paul donated the mats. I think they also bought pillows. And they're all, plastic that can be disinfected after they're done. And the pillows travel with the mats too. And so Paul donated that. We need more, of course, as the program grows, which because of its success, I presume, I hope, that it will continue to grow. And, depending on the limitations of the structures, really. But we've been fairly lucky with I expect in the fall when people come home, we'll have more if we need them.
So here, you started, I'm sorry, in the initial meeting was in February, is that what I heard?
The first meeting, the forum, that was I think it was November of 2010.
Oh, 2010.
2010. That was
Okay.
when Father Joel invited all these agencies and churches and what have you to come and talk, and the AFC grew out of that meeting.
I think the
And
AFC
then-
probably started about this time last year, didn't it?
That sounds about right.
As a monthly planning brainstorming group with regularity. I think it started about this time last year.
Yeah, and this current shelter project began 3 months ago with your church, Calvary. And then the others of us joined in soon afterward.
Yeah.
It has served a tremendous need in the community to do some organizing, because you've got a lot of goodwill in this community, but it needs to be brought, it helps a lot if we can all work together. And that's what's happening. And it's thanks to the leadership of your pastor. He's been wonderful.
It sounds like a beautiful example of people getting together and with not a lot of resources, doing some really valuable work. So my hat is off to you and everyone in the program. It sounds great. How much? So 4 churches. Does that mean that there are 4 nights that housing is available in these churches? Shelter. Okay, and the other 3 nights
Not yet.
currently nothing. Okay, but you are in discussion with other churches.
Oh, yes,
About
definitely.
trying to enlist them.
Father
Okay.
Joel says that, of course he won't mention, and I wouldn't even if I knew, that he feels that they are seriously considering it. But it's
Okay.
a question of organizing their parishes and informing their parish and looking at our programs and, just sharing our experiences to see how.
It's not a trivial matter for any church
No, it
to
isn't.
do
It
this,
isn't.
because you have property, you have legal liabilities, and all kind of things to think about.
Yeah, yeah.
And we sort of have to
Well,
feel
and
your
as we
way.
all know, a lot of people are really afraid of homeless people. They, for whatever reason. And it's a big thing to open up basically your home of worship to people that you maybe don't completely trust yet until you get to know them.
So within the congregation, then, is there, if I can approach this delicate subject here, what has been the response of your various congregations to this program?
Well, in my congregation, this particular ministry has been like a lightning bolt. The volunteer response that we've had has been amazing. We have something like 30 volunteers signed up over a 6-month schedule to prepare meals, bring in meals, clean up meals, spend time with our guests in the sleeping hall, provide rides from downtown up to our church, give people takeaway breakfasts in the morning when they leave. And this group of people engaged in this ministry has been developing a cohesiveness and a sense of mission, which we find just tremendously edifying for our congregation. It shows us what we've been telling each other, which is that the center of the Christian tradition is not a fixed set of beliefs. It's not a creed that we swear to. It's a way of living. And that way of living is to follow Jesus in serving our neighbors. And so it's been a really important part of our congregational growth.
Well, I can't say that we're as well organized as you are, Jim, but it's growing, and I have not heard a word of dissent. But it's not surprising to me. Our church has a tradition of openness and of wanting to do this kind of thing. It's, you know, I was thinking, well, you could say it's Christianity. It's actually humanity 101. I mean, this is fundamental stuff. This is what you need to do. People understand that.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's good. We all learn, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we made sure as a vestry that we had a tremendous amount, and we promised ourselves we were not going to rush. Although we were under the gun because we knew that the armory would be closing. It was winter, it was cold and rainy, and we wanted to get the doors open as soon as possible. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that the entire parish was well educated. So we had emails going out. It was in our monthly newsletter. We had forums every Sunday, which we do every Sunday anyway, with different topics, but we had several. So people could come and voice their concerns and find out exactly what the parameters of the program were going to be. And I think it was worth it because I have not heard anyone, as I say, the program's running so smoothly that no one has anything that they could worry about. But it was important to us that the parish be very, very well informed before we even started.
And your volunteers probably, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on your name.
Me?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Is like Jim's experience, the volunteers that are involved are very committed, sounds like. Has there been any, I know you said you've all said this is not something we entered into lightly, and we wanted to make sure that we were well prepared before we opened our home, basically, our second home to strangers. And what, internally in the church, Paul said he has seen no dissent. Has that been the experience?
I have not heard anything. As I say, being on the vestry, everything has to go through us. If there is a problem, it has to be discussed. And we did, I think it was not last month, but the month before, we voted unanimously to continue the program.
Okay.
So I'm sure had there been any inkling from any corner of the parish, it would have entered into that discussion.
Sure.
And it didn't.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we didn't have any problems. Of course, we've been all for 6 or 7 years very involved. We have done this kind of thing sporadically on a case-by-case basis where we knew someone and they really needed a few days of shelter. They've slept in the sanctuary or somewhere. On really rainy, stormy nights, I've had 50, 60 people in our fellowship hall to get them out of the storms, out of the lightning before a tree fell on them or something. We've done that on stormy nights more than once. So this was kind of a no-brainer for us. They ask the appropriate questions because we have been around the block enough to know that there are some folks that are not safe to leave and to invite into your sanctuary, But from the beginning, the idea was, of course, we want to participate with this. Our problem is that we're a small group and largely elderly or already exhausted by the zillions of hours of volunteering they already do for the homeless, cooking and caring and providing showers and other things. And so we were not able to find the volunteers very quickly. But the intent and the open-mindedness and the open heart to want to do this was always there.
Let's, we have another video prepared, so I'm going to run that now. And this is from USA Today. It's 3 years old, but I'm using these older videos because really the problem hasn't really changed. But this video in particular is from USA Today. I think I said that. It's from 2009. It describes or it shows us a homeless city in St. Petersburg, Florida. And St. Petersburg, instead of, their way of dealing with the problem was to actually create a place for homeless people to be. And with the help of Catholic Charities, another faith-based group, who provided funding, they have actually built very rudimentary but shelters, permanent shelters for people who have lost their housing. So it's called The New Homeless, and let's take a look at that right now, please.
I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. I was doing well as a union carpenter. There was plenty of work. I had a car. And then the economy just seemed to let go.
I was making about 50 grand a year up in the Detroit area in the auto industry. I had my own house, my own car, bank account. It's hard to fathom what's become of me at this point.
I can't find work. I've made Caesar salads tableside, carved Chateaubriand. I can't get a job at Taco Bell.
David, Jim, and Kevin never expected to become homeless, but they found themselves in a tent city called Pinellas Hope, which is outside of St. Petersburg, Florida. Unlike longtime street residents who often suffer from mental illness or substance abuse, many of these newly homeless people have the economy to blame.
We're getting more and more single moms with babies. We're seeing families where there were 2 workers losing their jobs. I do think the population is changing. We're trying to assist those that are most in need and most ready to move on.
We were having folks just putting up tents just on the sidewalk of our city streets. We'd rather have it in a contained area where there is structure, there is somebody to watch over, there is help out here, than just having individuals, at whim put tents up.
It's not so bad right now, but I can only imagine in the summertime in Florida, when it gets into the 90s and 100s, trying to sleep in a tent at night with the heat and the bugs and the mosquitoes and the snakes and the armadillos and the...
Accelerated. And okay, we're back. So this was, that video was from USA Today. Again, it was from 2009. A homeless city that the city of St. Petersburg, Florida has set up. As you saw, the tents, many of them were the same. So those were donated from a single source or paid for and obtained from a single source. And then Catholic Charities provided funds to build shelter, shelters out of wood. So that's how they've dealt with it. And also we heard about how these guys, a couple of them said, I'm 48 or 50 years old, I can't recall, and I had a real job, and all of a sudden I lost my job, and I never thought this would happen, but here I am living in a tent, and I can't believe this has happened to me. So that was 2008. It was 2009, rather, the year following the giant financial calamity, that was the worldwide financial crisis. Thank you to the banks and for destroying our economy. That's my editorializing. So, but the film is about the new homeless, and I know that your program has not been around that long, but we have seen spikes in numbers all over the country.
Well, we've been working with homeless folks on the Lower West Side for 6 or 7 years before the economic crash. And for most of those years, it was the same 30, 40, maybe 50 people. Some of them had been in that neighborhood living homeless for 10, 20 years. And it was very stable. They all knew each other, they watched out for each other, they took care of each other, and we knew them. And they knew us, and we worked very well together. The last 2 years, it's a whole different world. I see far more people whose names I don't know than people whose names I do know, and that's very, very recent. The last, I'd say, year and a half, we started seeing so many new faces that it's just amazing.
And do you have any idea, are these local people, or have they come here from elsewhere?
I'd say 3/4 of the homeless people I've met for the entire 6 or 7 years are local. They didn't come here from anywhere. Some of them came back to Santa Cruz recently after having gone somewhere else, and in one case got a job and then lost the job and ended up homeless in the snow, said, I'm going to Santa Cruz. It's not snowing there. And I know people there, and they'll take care of me there. And so, but mostly, all this time that I've worked with the homeless, it's largely been people that were born and raised in Santa Cruz County. One of the first homeless women I met has never in her life been out of Santa Cruz County, and she's been homeless for 25 years. She would love to visit someplace else just to see what the rest of the world looks like, but you can't.
Anyone else want to comment on? Okay. The numbers, the new numbers. Neighbors. In the video, we saw a couple who were housed. They had a house, they had a nice house, and they had a lake, and I imagine they might have a boat even. I don't know. They looked like they were doing very well, and they were expressing their concern that they did not want homeless people in their neighborhood. What has been your experience at your churches with the neighbors of your church? Who would like to begin?
Well, in our case, we're in a location where we have no close neighbors. It's a residential neighborhood, but our church campus is separated by a distance of 100 yards from the nearest home. So we haven't had any neighbor problem at all. We do have a preschool that uses the building where we house the homeless on Sunday nights. So we need to make sure we're all cleaned up and everybody's gone by 7 a.m. Monday morning in order for that to work. And the preschool director works directly with us and the monitors of the Sunday night shelter program. So for us, there isn't any real neighborhood problem, although we're well aware of the issues that abound in downtown Santa Cruz.
I'd say in our case, we haven't heard any complaints. I think it's a matter of being discreet so that you don't have people, all over the place. And I think, again, I attribute the success of the program from our point of view primarily to the way Ian and Satori have handled it. They try to be careful, and they try to tell people to be careful, and I think people respond. So far we've not had that.
You've not, and I just want to remind people, you're with Trinity Presbyterian.
Trinity, and we're over on the east side.
Right.
We're downtown, you're on the west side. We're all in different places. We're the
are all
only
around
ones on
town,
the
yeah.
east side. And there are homes right there, and there's a middle school, kitty corner across, and so forth. So it could be an issue. We also have the preschool, and that has always been an issue. It was an issue way back when we were sheltering the men in the earlier program. And we just had to work it out so that they minimize the interference. These are the problems you have. I mean, they're practical problems. You just have to deal with them.
Well, our location, as everybody and probably the entire world is aware, the Little Red Church downtown with the only green space and trees for relief in the summertime. We've had our share of problems. We've had complaints from some neighbors. I think, and I will contribute Father Joel with the organization, our Monday night coffee house dinner that we do, and of course the shelter program too. And I think it's the organization, and his philosophy always was, we want people to own these programs. This is your program. Everyone who comes through those doors is treated with dignity and a smile. I mean, there's no judgment here. This is where you come if you want to eat, if you want to sleep, but you obey our rules. We will not be treated without respect. And because I think this has started, we have not had a complaint, to my knowledge, in a long time. In fact, I think one of the nicest compliments we got was from a woman who's on our preschool board also. And she said, these last 6 months, last year, dates kind of elude me, she said, the woman who runs the preschool, she said, we're fine. We are completely fine, because I think it's so well organized now. And people are aware. If you're we're a downtown church, there are going to be people sleeping on our porch. Unless we have a person who's walking the grounds, we have security people, but they can't be everywhere all the time. But I think it's really because it's become, this is their little place to go.
Well, anytime you start something new that you've not been doing before, there are going to be, some growing pains. And when we started out 6 or 7 years ago, not so much sheltering people, but just being involved, allowing homeless people, inviting homeless people to be on our campus, and they did a lot of volunteer work, and it was a mutual relationship. But neighbors were very upset for a couple of 3 years there, so upset and so concerned that we were bringing crime into the neighborhood that I went to the police website and did the crime mapping and analyzed the last 3 years, the first 3 years that we were involved in the homeless, and found that crime had dropped in the immediate neighborhood around the church, in some cases by 50%. Although the feeling of many neighbors, because they saw so many homeless people visible, was that crime must be up, but it wasn't. With this satellite program, it has been so smooth and, as you say, so nicely organized. The folks that are there are so carefully screened and are just the right people that need this the most and are going to respond to it most graciously, that it's been absolutely painless for the neighborhood, as well as I think for us at the church and for everyone.
What contact do you have with your neighbors? Do they come and speak with you? Do you do outreach? Do you go and invite them to come to the church and discuss their concerns? Or?
I go to a lot of neighborhood watch meetings, and my email and my office door is always open. I have 2 or 3 neighbors that when they see things going on that concern them, I say, come talk to me. I'll tell you exactly what it is. I want to be transparent and open. Like Jim, we feel we have a gospel, a founder who was homeless, who said something about taking the homeless in, and to people that didn't shelter the homeless, he said, go away from me, I never knew you. So we feel like we don't have an option, but we want to be transparent and we want to be open and we want to be sure it's safe for everybody, and so my door is open. The truth is I probably have 2 neighbors who tell me they love what we're doing at the church for every one neighbor that doesn't like it, but the ones that don't like it can be very vocal and be very angry about it. Has any of your churches recruited volunteers from the community that are not members of your congregation? 2/3 or 3/4 of the folks that are cooking on Tuesday nights are not members of the community. And actually we have people cooking on Sundays for the homeless as well. And half the folks on Sunday morning that are in the kitchen cooking are not members of our church at all. It's got to where I don't even know who's a member anymore. It's just one big family.
It's kind of a nice thing, I imagine.
It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful idea, and congratulations again, and thank you for doing this. So what are besides the obvious benefits of giving someone a roof over their head at night and some security, safety from whatever, all the dangers there are with sleeping outdoors in an urban environment, what are the other benefits, do you think, of providing a sleeping place, a safe place for people to sleep? Anybody? What have you heard? What have the people that you serve, what have they told you?
It's probably kept some people out of the hospital, which would be very expensive for the whole community because that's going to come out of tax money. They have no insurance. And it's given some people some hope. They were maybe on the verge of desperate despair. The other thing that I've seen in general with this kind of ministry is that when I came to Santa Cruz to pastor this church 9 years ago, every morning the parking lot was littered with broken bottles, needles. There was a lot of graffiti, broken windows. When we get to know people and they get to know us, we can encourage a mutual respect. And the folks that we serve, like you say, they own the church. It's their church. It's their home too. They take care of it. And they informally police the folks that would disrespect our property now. So we rarely have those kind of problems with graffiti or littering these days.
What Steve is saying about our founder, we feel that his mission was to bring the marginal people into society. And if you read the Gospels, that becomes very clear. And this is the same thing. These folk are marginal, and they don't very often have a chance to participate in any society. So what we have here is a case where even among themselves, being in a safe place, sitting at table with other people, you have community. And it's really a marvelous thing to have happen. So that's one part. The other part is that those of us who live in a relatively favorable, very much more favorable type of life, experience an ability to reach into the part of our society that isn't so favorable, and it's something we desperately need to understand and do. So it works in both directions. It's not a one-way street. There's never a one-way street in these things. I feel every time I go down there, I learn something. I mean, you just always are learning. A while back in another program that we were involved with, all of us, I think, we were looking at the life of the German Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was an amazing Christian pastor. And he wrote a little book, I'm sure you guys know it, I imagine you do. It was called Life Together, you know that book? And it was about, actually it was a Christian community that he at that time was head of. It was a community, almost like a monastery.
Semi-monastic.
Yeah, it was semi-monastic. But in the book, he writes about the meaning of Christian fellowship. And it always is so striking when you read that, because he said, the strong need the weak, and the weak need the strong. And always you don't know who's weak and who's strong in some of these situations. But there is this interaction, and that, from my point of view, and I think many of us feel that, is so fundamental. That we're building community. We're building life in the community, and that's what we...
And I would hope that the church is the place where these labels that we almost can't help but use around a table like this actually disappear on the property of the church. We don't have homeless people and church people. We're just one family. I think it's very, very important. Someone once said, don't do ministry to the homeless, do ministry with the homeless. Yeah. So that it's just one family together. And you know, the friendships I have with people, some of whom happen not to have a house to sleep in at night, are lifelong, and they're deep bonds. And the joy that I've experienced playing music with them, or just talking and being honored to hear their stories, once in a while to hear the real story, is amazing.
When we take seriously our calling to love our neighbors as ourselves, we find that everybody is changed in the process, because we're all connected in a web of relationships. And when a person who's been suffering and deprived experiences love from a neighbor, that person is changed, and that person goes into the world the next morning with a different mind and a different heart. And that changes the people with whom he or she comes into relationship. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to ask why you personally participated in this program, but I think you've really spoken to that already, all of you. Can I know? I would like to do this announcement. Can I know how much time we have left?
5 minutes.
5? Okay. I think I'm going to end this right here. I do have an announcement that we had planned to do earlier, and technical problems got in my way. But I want to thank you all for coming and talking about this. And so, of course, you're always looking for volunteers, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Donations would be gratefully accepted. Certainly. So, thank you all for coming. Steve Gambrel from Circle Church, and Chris Perrin from the Red Church, Calvary Episcopal, Paul Seaver from the Trinity Presbyterian, and Jim Weller of the High Street Congregational Church. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have an announcement, an announcement of an event that I was just learned about, and I wanted to share with my audience tonight. We'll have a speaker tomorrow night. So today is the 22nd of July. That'll be the 23rd. So let's put her image up here. Medea Benjamin, the world-renowned activist, will be speaking tonight in Santa Cruz. She'll be at Bookshop Santa Cruz, speaking about her new book, Drone Warfare, Killing by Remote Control, and the use of pilotless airplanes, unmanned aerial vehicles, as they're technically called, has just exploded in the last couple of years. The Bush administration used them quite a bit. Obama has used them more, much more, and they're used to target, suspected insurgents, suspected militants in particularly in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, and in Yemen. And the results, the consequences of this have just been devastating. Many civilians have been killed in these attacks, and it is not doing anybody any good. We intended to have Medea phone into the show tonight. We had some technical problems, so that's why I'm giving you the information myself. So you can hear Medea speak tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m. at the Bookshop Santa Cruz here on Pacific Avenue in Santa Cruz, and she'll be speaking about the book she has just completed, again, Drone Warfare, Killing by Remote Control. I can't recommend her highly enough. I've had the pleasure of knowing Medea for many years and working with her, and she deserves her reputation as a world, someone who puts herself in harm's way sometimes, actually, and has been arrested countless times for getting in the for speaking truth to power on a television camera. So that's so check her out on. You can go to codepink.org. She's one of the co-founders of Code Pink. She's also one of the co-founders of Global Exchange, and that again is globalexchange.org. And you can learn more about her work there and what she has done. So again, there's the book title, and you can see her again tomorrow night at Bookshop Santa Cruz. Thank you for joining us tonight. I just want to put in a plea here to community television, for community television. This is our television. There are no sponsors here. Well, there are, but it's not like giant corporations are throwing money at us. This is done by the community for the community, and it is a really important resource. Many communities don't have this, so we should be very grateful. Consider becoming a member of community television. Consider joining community television. Come on down and take a class and learn how to operate a camera or do whatever else jobs. There are many jobs here that need to be done, which leads me to thanking the all-volunteer crew here on Voices from the Village. All of the shows at community television are produced by volunteers, and we need to, of course, we need more. And as we learned from our guests tonight, it is the volunteers, the community that makes everything happen. Our producer on this show is Charlie Phillips, many years producing Voices from the Village. And our director tonight is Ken Nobler. We have camera people. I don't even know all the camera people's names. We have so many here. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we do. Yes, I do. Annie Newman and Betsy Phillips. Again, thanks for watching tonight, and we'll see you next time on Voices from the Village. Thanks for joining us.